This is the Elsa Kurt Show.
Oh, hey, I'm just rocking out to our new tune. I love our song. And some people, you just mentioned it before we came on. There's people who are loving our new theme song. We thank you for that. We're digging it ourselves.
Yeah, it was, folks, Elsa, while I pick the topics, she does all of the hard work as far as editing and all that good stuff. So she sent me, what was it, 6 different?
Oh my gosh, I kept sending them to you.
Yeah, she sent me a bunch of songs, and that's the one we settled on, and it's by far my favorite of all of them. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it was a little rough going because you have to like listen to them like over and over and over again, and they start blending in together, and then you forget, wait, was this the one that I loved? So I'm like, forget it, I'm throwing it all on Clay. Clay, you decide.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I love it. It's got a good little rock and beat to it. Oh my goodness, we've got lots to talk about today, right?
Yeah, lots of things going on, even up to the minute stuff. We've had, and we'll see the topics in a minute. But even our leadoff topic, we got an update on that just as I was logging in. Oh, by the way, folks, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern is when we're recording. But here's a little peek at the topics for the day.
From the halls of Congress grinding to a halt over border battles, to Epstein's elite web unraveling in fresh files, and kids ditching class to chant down ICE, while Iran grips the Middle East in its iron fist, and the Grammys turn into a woke awards show. Join Elsa Kurt and Clay Novak as we break it all down with facts, fire, and a little faith. This is the Elsa Kurt Show. Real truth, bold faith, no apologies.
Yeah, it is. Oh my goodness. So I wish we had like like a little newsroom. I wish we had somebody like handing us the paper, like breaking news. Hang on, breaking news.
Yeah,
That's
we
the
do.
first thing I thought of when you said
it's
that.
the phone. It's this right here. This is where we get all of our updates from.
Yep, here. Here, you're better at getting those updates. I live in my little fairy tale world over here. I'm like, oh, is that what's going on? Fascinating. Well, I guess I will research it.
I have one of these inductive chargers, so the phone is on a stand. And I got it popped up next to me, so if anything hot happens, I always see it. Which it did, like I said, as we were logging in, and so you can see, folks. Our first topic is this partial government shutdown that happened last week and then into this week. And the latest update is President Trump just signed the bill that kind of puts the government back to work. In its, it was a partial shutdown. And I even had to look up, like, when you say partial shutdown, like, what are we talking about? And the list is weird. So, like, within the Department of Defense, the only thing that was affected by this partial shutdown were the federal police officers in Hawaii. That was it. Let's see, Department of Health and Human Services minus the FDA, right? So you got Administration for Children and Families, Community Living, Health Resources and Services Administration, National Center for Health Studies, right? And then within DHS, you had Customs and Border, you had the FLET, which is the Law Enforcement Training Centers, and then let's see, within Treasury, the IRS was shut down. Let's see, what else? Tax and Trade Bureau. And then there's, some other stuff. Federal Election Commission was shut down. So it wasn't everything. And it was even like partial divides within specific departments within the government. But really what it boiled down to was 417, 415, 217, 215. It passed and yesterday, and the president signed it today. So everybody should be back at work.
There you go. Well, from just what you read off, it sounds so random, the departments and areas that were effective. And then there's the other side of it. This is nothing's ever actually random. So I don't know what the reasoning is for those particular ones. Could you even put a guess to it, or maybe even know?
You would have to go through and probably hit them individually and say why. Why this one, why this one. I'm sure there's a reason, whether they're rational or not, I don't know. But I think they were individually plucked like that one, again, within the DOD. And again, folks, I refuse to say Department of War because it's not the actual title of the place. But, the federal police officers, the DOD police officers in Hawaii is the only thing that was affected. Very odd.
Yeah, super odd.
But, the points of contention for this were ICE funding was a big part of it.
Right.
On the Republican or on the Democrat side, but on the Republican side, there was a number of naysayers who did not want this to pass without the SAVE Act being attached to this, which I'm fairly
was
confident it was not. Yeah.
Yes, that was the last that I had heard, that it was not attached. I think President Trump had, who was it? Luna and a few other people come in who were, they were adamant about
Yeah,
it.
she's on
She was.
fire about that.
Yeah.
I follow her on social media, and if there is one thing that she talks about every single day, it's the SAVE Act.
Yeah, and she left that meeting agreeing to let it go. So for now, it's not like it's off the table. It's just set aside.
But there were some naysayers on the Republican side, because there were 21 Democrats who came across, and it still only passed by 2.
Yeah.
So there's an almost equal flip-flop of either non-votes or whatever that had to be made up for. So 21 Democrats came across in a somewhat nonpartisan passing of the bill. But very interesting. Obviously America wants the SAVE Act. Have you seen those numbers from CNN?
I have not. From CNN. No, I have not.
Right. And that's the valid part. CNN, they had 3 different across demographics: white, Hispanic, and Black Americans. And I think the numbers were 85% white want voter ID, 81 or 82% Hispanic want voter ID, and 76% Black want voter ID. So clearly the American voting public wants voter ID.
Right. And this is the part where we get so angry, because we're telling you what we want. Why are you not listening? Like, the people are telling you what we want. You work for us. Do what the hell we tell you to do, not whatever your political games and your grandstanding and all your BS is. Do what we tell you to do collectively as the whole, It's so freaking aggravating. So obviously, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm going to say it anyway. So obviously, the Democrats, their sticking point was the ICE reforms that they're pushing for. Do we, anybody know what specifically they were trying to get?
Yes. So they wanted body cams, which is happening. And I think you and I think every rational person is okay with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think, truthfully, in both cases of the Good and the Freddie shooting, I think have added a lot of clarity, immediately added a lot of clarity to both cases. I'm actually a little dumbfounded on why they don't have them.
You know what? I was going to say the same thing, Clay. To me, that would be a matter of course, especially with, everything that's going on. And I agree with you again, highly agree, emphatically agree that body cams, from the perspective of law enforcement families, spouses, all say the same thing for the most part, that please absolutely put those body cams on, because we want our officers, our agents protected from false claims and these malicious, distortions and lies of, what they're being accused of. And, and as what happened with law enforcement and using the body cams, all these departments that put the body cams on, all of those people who wanted them very, very quickly changed their minds. And suddenly it's an invasion. Oh, no, it's an invasion of my privacy. You can't do that. And the only real and legitimate arguments that I've ever heard from the side of law enforcement is the logistics and practicality and the financial cost of housing this information. So now you need a designated, depending on the size of the department, obviously, you need designated officers to manage and maintain that. Then you have, of course, the obvious, which we were just talking about, the privacy factor, victims' privacy and all that kind of thing. And there's so much. And then you add the next thing, which is, your jackasses that are, on the daily basis, hitting departments with FOIs because they think it's their right to know everything that their neighbor is doing, every second of the day, or they're just busybodies, whatever the case is. So there's a lot of layers to that are very complicated and that don't often get addressed properly in a way that satisfies everyone, because everyone who wants the body cams wants them immediately. So then, these departments will rush to appease the madness despite not really being able to. And then, of course, you have federal funding for that, the incentives to get the body cam. So there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people have no idea about. It's frustrating to me that like all you have to do is pause for a minute. I feel like a broken record when I say is like pause, think for a minute, like just think for a minute outside of like your knee-jerk immediate want and desire, and realize that there's so much more that goes on with this. Oh.
Yeah, you obviously you're in proximity as an LEO spouse. You probably hear about this stuff all the time. I have a criminal justice degree, but I haven't done anything law enforcement related since I was 22 years old, which is more than a few days ago. But I do know, and I try and keep up on things as best I can. And I know that the body cam issue, the one that surprised me, because you said it right, it's used in most cases to help protect police officers in the execution of their duties, right? It proves that they're doing the right thing. It does all of those things. And I have read in a number of places, and I'm not saying it's all of them, and I'm not saying that it's everybody, but police unions have often been on the not supporting side of body cams, because when they try to represent an officer in court, the body camera footage takes away all mystery. Like things become very, very cut and dry. And, a police union's job is to support and protect police officers. And from their perspective, in a lot of cases, it makes it more difficult to protect a police officer when there's body camera footage. Now, I think, again, every rational person and every LEO I've ever met likes the body camera. So those are just, kind of opinions. And I understand I do understand, I don't agree with, but I do understand the union's position on that. So, but anyway, so body cams was one. They wanted them all to be unmasked, and that they could not hide their identity in any way, shape, or form. So I think that what they wanted in the modern, everybody wears a tack vest now. Like there's nobody running around without one. So what they wanted was, some sort of identification readily visible on the vest, no facial coverings, like those kind. It's all the the things that everybody's up in arms about is what the Dems wanted. And I think part of that, and I think the only thing that was stipulated was the body cams, which again, I think most people are completely fine with.
Yeah. And, and I'm fair enough to say, I understand I understand, and I don't believe that this is what these people are asking, why they're asking for it. I do understand from a perspective that if a police officer comes to your door, knocks on your door, they have to identify themselves, right? Like they have to tell you who they are, what department they're from, blah blah blah, all those things. And I get that there would be frustration that ICE is a form of law enforcement, so they should be held under the same, like that's probably the argument, right? They should be held under the same standard that you have to identify yourself and who you are, blah blah blah, all those things. However, we are living in a time where we are actively watching these very people, these activists, these protesters, these rioters, doxing these agents in real time, and encouraging and inciting people to go after their families, their children, their spouses, their loved ones, their dogs. So, listen, you guys did this. This is your fault that this has become a hell no. At least it's a hell no in my mind. Not that I have a say in it, but if I did, it would be an absolute hell no. They should not be required to be unmasked because their families' lives are being threatened. And, there's enough proof. Anybody's going to watch this and say, no, they're not. You're just making that is real. That is happening. So
yeah, I saw a video just this morning, which was probably one of the most disturbing things I've seen in a while. And I've seen personally, there's quite a few African-American Black conservatives that I follow on social media. And I love a lot of the messages. Some of them are kind of very rational, soft, kind of things. Some of them are very blunt, but I do enjoy their content. But I did see this morning that an ICE officer, an African-American ICE officer, got called a house N-bomb by a white. He couldn't tell if it was a male or a female, but got called, house N-bomb. And so now you've got, and they call him that because, they think because he's enforcing the law that he is somehow a sellout and all of these other things. But, the racism against against African American conservatives or African American Black law enforcement officers is out of control now. And I think, this
and
is
Hispanic too,
and it's all the minority officers
Latin
that are involved.
Hispanic,
In fact, the officer or officers, but at least one of the officers that shot Preddy is Hispanic.
Okay.
And reportedly, and folks, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's been reported he's also gay. So like, if you want to put the liberal folks into a pretzel, right? So now that, it's a Hispanic gay male ICE officer,
right? What do you do with that?
Yeah, right. But he is Hispanic. I do know that. I don't know if he is in fact gay or not. But regardless of all that, there is tons of prejudice. So it does go back to the I don't care who you are. It's all about politics, or it's all about TDS, or it's all about all of those things. And that's really kind of where we're at right now. And it going back to our point, it elevated itself all the way up to, Democrat representation in Congress, that they wanted these unmaskings and all of these things as part of a funding bill that was shutting down the government. So it's a strange world we're living in right now, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, my stand is always the same on all of this stuff, and it's probably going to be a cold day in hell before I change my stance here. Fund the wall, back the blue, and remember that hypocrisy is the left's favorite policy. So let's go
a little bit out of order. We'd planned, folks, we've seen it, and it's everywhere. ICE out, right? ICE out is the new slogan, and kind of dovetailing off what we were talking about, this is defund the police 2.0. This is the new message, right? When was the last time you heard defund the police?
Right. Yeah. Back back in earlier 2020s, right? 22, 23, maybe it was like when it's
right. A little bit in the lead up to the presidential election. But I think even when they switched over to Kamala Harris, she even backed away from that. I think there was some even like they questioned Mamdani about it when he was running for mayor, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to defund the police," But this is the same thing. Like ICE out, right? There's movements in Congress right now to not just get ICE out of places like Minneapolis and these other places they've been operating, but also to get rid of ICE completely, disband it, get rid of it as an organization, which is absolute lunacy.
It's complete lunacy. They're just, if they weren't so dangerous, I would just simply call them silly and dismiss them. But, because of all of, again, layers to everything that's happening with all of this, it is lunacy. It is absolute madness. And it is just 2.0. Like we said, it is 2.0 of defund the police, of abolish ICE, of, all of the things, anything, let's face it, anything that represents, and here it is maybe in a nutshell, anything that represents law and order and authority, and that's it. Anything that represents that is in their mind the problem, because all they want is disorder and chaos and anarchy and disruption and divisiveness and anger. Like they want, I just wish people would get this through their heads. All they want is chaos. That is the goal. There's no, they like to pretend, and people, particularly on the left, fall for this all the time, constantly, that they believe that they're fighting for something. But if they'd stop and pause long enough to realize what is being proposed instead, like what are you going to do instead? And I know somebody will probably come in and say, well, they want civic policing, let us police ourselves. Like really, you really think that works? Please, I would actually love to let somebody be the example. Somebody want to take that on. Some
listen, we tried that, and Trayvon Martin happened, and then
perfect example,
right? Yeah, had a neighborhood watch, right? And Trayvon Martin got killed, and nobody was happy about that. So pick what you want, but again, it's that the hypocrisy over and over again of all of this is just it's unbearable at times. Because listen, we know defund the police didn't work, right? And the places where it was tried, there's tons of evidence. There's tons of data now that crime has rapidly increased, or has increased in focus areas, specifically where they've defunded the police. Now, we've got crime statistics for 2025. President Trump had a good time with those the other day, where it was like, well, And the New York Times, you want to talk about irresponsible journalism. They published an entire article with all of the statistics on where and what violent crimes have been reduced and in which cities. And then basically the message of the article was, and we don't understand why it happened. Well, it could be that like we empowered law enforcement to do their job again. Right. We didn't vilify them. We stopped with the message of defund the police. We started augmenting them with National Guard where they needed help. We started doing those things. And oh, by the way, we deported a few million illegal immigrants, many of whom, a number of whom were violent criminals, right? Like all of the reasons are there. But of course, the New York Times couldn't give credit where credit's due. They just went with the shoulder shrug, kind of excuse. But this is going to be as successful as defund the police, which means it's not going to be successful at all. A year from now, 6 months from now, actually probably after the 700 ICE agents come out of Minneapolis, which is going to happen here in the very near future, because Tom Homan struck a deal. You're going to see all these problems in Minneapolis go down too.
Right. Absolutely.
This is going to be unsuccessful. It's a failed effort.
Oh, it definitely will. And I tell you, several years back, I read and reread and shared multiple times over what I thought to be at that time one of the absolute best articles, posts that I've ever read regarding policing and the truth and the dispelling the lies and everything. It was written by Jeffrey James Higgins, who I was so fortunate to get to. He's an author. Jeffrey James Higgins, go look him up. And I was able to interview him shortly after. I just kind of cold called him and said, hey, I'd really love to interview you. And he was gracious and he agreed to. Absolutely unbelievably smart man. His wife is incredible, also an author. But he wrote this article that just laid it all out, and it still holds. Everything that he put in that article still holds to this very minute. It's just outdated in that he doesn't, it doesn't have the stats for 2025 in it, 24. But the article, I really want you guys to go take a look at it if you're so inclined. It is called Systematic Racism in Policing. It's Time to Stop the Lying. And it's by Jeffrey James Higgins. I highly recommend you go and read that and, maybe just do whatever you need to do to modernize it, get those stats for right now, like Clay was just talking about. But that really spells it out, the truth, that's hidden or ignored by these people about policing, about, community police, about police officer involved shootings and deaths and all of those things, and the population of who is actually committing the crimes. It's brilliant. And, in regards to what you were saying before about what happened when in those areas where they did, kick law enforcement out, it's so predictable. It's absurd that we would even have to tell you what happened, right? Anyone with an ounce of common sense knows exactly what would happen. But, and it would be funny if there weren't, good people victimized by those decisions simply because they were poor or they are poor. They are the most vulnerable people with zero protection, and they were essentially left to just fend for themselves, and that is horrific. And shame on BLM and anyone, political leaders who supported that and championed that absurdity and that atrocity. So yeah, there's my soapbox. I'm still angry about it.
And one of the concerns that we have now, if you go back in time, and not to dwell on this too much, but if you go back in time, organized crime was essentially a replacement for policing in neighborhoods that weren't being policed. Like, that's the genesis of much of organized crime when you go all the way back, right? Now, what you would have in the power vacuum or the vacuum of law enforcement in many places in the United States is you're going to end up with Sharia law, which we cannot, for the good of the country, let alone the people who live in it, allow that to take root anywhere in any form at all. So, but that's what would happen in a place like Minneapolis, is that in neighborhoods where the police back out or there isn't policing or the people are left to their own devices, you will have Sharia law established, and then there will be neighborhood patrols, and then you'll have all kinds of things that shouldn't go on that will go on, and we can't have that. So. By the way, the deal I was talking about that Tom Homan struck with Minneapolis and Minnesota itself. The reason they're pulling those 700 ICE agents out is because they have finally agreed to cooperate with ICE when they detain an illegal immigrant.
That is an important distinction too.
That's it. That's all he wanted. And so now when they arrest an illegal immigrant, they just turn them over.
Right.
And it's just that simple. So now I don't know what the repercussions are if they renege on that deal, but that was the crux of, him saying, hey, listen, we've had a lot of great, Tom Homan's polished. He knows what he's doing. And he said, listen, this is all we were looking for. Some great cooperation with some local law enforcement and we need their help and blah, 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 blah. And here's the deal that we struck. And he was very matter of fact about it. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. And based on what we know of Tom Homan and his character and, how he just does things, I would all but guarantee that there is some pretty hefty, right? Like there's something like if you renege,
the consequences will be severe.
Yeah. And it was probably, I could imagine, very Trump-like. He was probably like, don't do it.
Yeah. Just
don't do it.
Yeah. And not in the Biden way of no.
Yeah. I said no.
No. Yeah.
No. With his little crooked finger. Oh my goodness. Well, this really, I think we should just continue on with this because, oh my goodness. Wow. And I do have a counter to this that I shared with my audience, and I will share it after we talk about this to kind of lighten a little bit, because I am going to show a video. I did take the sound off because it's just disturbing. The video itself is simply disturbing and upsetting. So I'm going to play it, and we'll just keep talking over it.
For those folks that are listening and not watching, we are talking about kids, middle schoolers and high schoolers who are being not just allowed, but encouraged and even mandated to go participate in anti-ICE protesting across the country. Middle schoolers, high schoolers and middle schoolers.
Yeah, which, just all on its own is insane. So for anyone, again, who's not able to watch, we're just showing a video of this little mob of what look to be like middle schoolers. They don't look high school. Maybe young. It could be somewhere right in between. Like, if anything, they can't be more than freshmen. They're kind of on the little side. I mean, they're big enough. Let's put in, they're big enough to inflict some damage. But they just went on a rampage and they were attacking. So the original caption on this from, I don't know if it was the original poster or who, but somebody had captioned it with that this mob of youths attacked a teacher. And there was a correction to it that he was not a teacher. He was just a motorist. So they just, went up and I don't know the scene beforehand, but the video is them attacking this.
Did they drag him out of his truck or did he get out?
I don't know. So he may have gotten out to maybe get him to, they were probably crowding the vehicle, probably not letting him pass, doing what they're taught to do by their elders, which is to impede traffic and cause the kind of disruption, both actually. And so I don't have what happened in the moments before where he either was pulled out or got out. But they are quite literally kicking him, punching him, a gang of them. It's not just one or two.
Yeah, that was probably 20 kids.
Yeah, and you can see, and I had to watch it a few times to realize that was the case. There were some kids that were trying to pull the other kids off and push them back and stop them. So thank goodness for some sense and some kids, with some good moral grounding, that it, at least some of that kicked in somewhere in all of this. And they're like, whoa, this is too much. Wasn't signed on for that. And of course the irony, and I don't know if you caught it, Clay, at the end of the video, you can see one of these attackers, these young people, has a shirt on that says something about choosing kindness. I mean, the irony. Of course. Right? I mean, if that isn't that movement, air quotes for that, if that isn't that movement in a nutshell, wearing a shirt that says choose kindness while pummeling someone who may or may even not disagree with your perspective. Wow is all I can say. But
he's nicer than me. He's nicer than me because he kind of fought his way, not really fought, but he kind of worked his way out of, being manhandled, and then casually kind of walked away back to his truck. And
he's a superhero because I don't know how he did that.
Yeah,
I would have.
There would have been those kids would have been in a bad way, but
they would.
Folks, listen, we've got, and this is nationwide. This is not isolated incidences, but there was the quote unquote national walkout that happened And then, in a couple of other cases, you have middle schoolers and high schoolers who are walking out of school and participating in anti-ICE protesting. Now, high schoolers, we all went to high school. You get to that point in that 15, 16, 17-year-old brain where, damn the man, and everybody who's an authority figure is an ass, and okay, I get it. Sure. So, should they all have been, listen, I know if we would have got up and walked out of school, there would have been some repercussions for that. Right. These kids, unfortunately, are being encouraged, in many cases, being allowed to spend class time making their signs for these protests. Teachers, turning a blind eye to what's going on, and even outwardly encouraging. Again, high schoolers are one thing. I don't agree with it, but they're a significantly different population than middle schoolers. Now you've got kids who truthfully are not old enough to be making these kind of judgments, even just casually. Any kid who's got an opinion on this, I can promise you got it from home, from, the environment that they live in at home. But now we've got teachers that are influencing this and mandating. I've seen a couple of instances where kids were mandated to go, middle schoolers, mandated to go to these protests. And we know these turn on a dime and get violent. Yeah. And because you don't know who else is going to show up. Right. You don't know what the conditions are going to be. Peaceful protest is always a great idea. Very rarely happens that way. And now we're putting kids at risk. At a minimum, we are turning a blind eye and allowing them to participate. Right. And at the worst case scenario, we're dragging them along, whether they want to go or not, and putting them in harm's way. Yeah. And this is reprehensible. Like any teacher, I think, associated with this should be immediately fired. Absolutely. This is, we've talked about politics in the classroom a number of times, which is wholly inappropriate. But this now, you're talking about risk to children for no reason, no good reason at all.
Right. Yeah. The only reason is to create little radicals, little baby radicals.
That's exactly right.
To warp their minds with, radical ideology. And, again, it becomes a cliche now because it's been said so often, but is the absolute truth. They are teaching these children what to think instead of how to think. They're not encouraging rational thought. They're encouraging impulsive reactiveness and just awful. And then, of course, like you said, to your point, that they are the political conversations in the schools are so wholly and highly inappropriate and unacceptable, and they have no place there unless you are in a sociology class. And that's usually high school. I don't even think they have that in middle school. I have no idea anymore. No. But, unless you're in a sociology class or a political science class or anything like that, where that is the subject. And even then I am wary because it is being taught so one-sided and you're only being taught from one perspective. You should be teaching these kids, this is what, this party believes and stands for historically and currently. And this is what that party, all of those things. Fine. If you want to talk about those topics, the ideologies, the contrasting belief systems and all those things, then you talk about it in a neutral way and you allow them to think about what makes sense to them. And we know that that's not happening because they're producing these little lunatics, mindless little lunatics. And again, and I point out that those handful of kids that were trying to pull them off of the guy and everything, so this isn't, it's widespread. Yes, absolutely. But I hate to not acknowledge so many youth that are resisting this, and which brings me to kind of that little story I wanted to mention, a personal story. I shared it on my page, but I had my husband and I this past weekend after church, we decided to take a little run over to Barnes and Noble, and we really just wanted to have some coffee and just browse and all of that stuff. And I went in with the purpose to get Charlie Kirk's new book, last book. And as I was walking by the section where all his books were, there was a group of teenage girls, young teenage girls. If I had to guess, I'd put them at maybe 13, 14 or so. It was probably about 4 or 5 of them. all being little teenage girls. They were all huddled up and giggling together and, talking a little loud, and just, they were cute. And just as I was passing, one of them gasped and just went, "Oh, look!" And she pointed. I could see her as I'm walking, and she points to a book on the shelf, which I could not see in that moment, but I heard her. She said, "It's Charlie. Look, it's Charlie's book." And one of the other girls says, "Oh, I loved him." And all of these girls were just amazing, and they were just saying the cutest, sweet, right off the top of their head things, and then they just moved on with their life. And and I looked, and of course it was Charlie Kirk's book. And what was so touching to me about this, by itself alone is touching, but the fact that I live in a very liberal state, the town I was in is a very liberal town. My own expectations of what people in my area are thinking and feeling, that was a little smack upside the back of the head, like, don't make assumptions about how people are going to think and react. And I feel like this is important to point out right now as we're talking about kids, and we're seeing videos like that, and we're seeing all of the social media stuff of everybody on their worst behavior and being their worst. And these young people, college students, we see on our side of it, we see so much of the radical leftist ideology, that the septum piercings and the blue hair and the general malaise that they have about life and everything. But there is that other side of it, and I think it is much larger than we realize that it is. And that was one of those moments for me. So thank you for indulging me in telling that. And I love to remind myself of that, when I start getting fired up and thinking that, ooh, we're in such deep trouble. I don't know if we're in some trouble for sure, but there are ones out there that are countering this really well.
Yeah, the pendulum is swinging. I think, been discussions since post-COVID, since right after kind of things opened back up again, that this generation of young kids, and when I say that, I'm talking, the kids who are in their like mid-teens into their early 20s, who had to go through COVID in middle school, high school, and college, are going to be the ones who swing back towards a more conservative viewpoint nationwide, because they kind of, they lived under the thumb of COVID and they didn't appreciate it. So that's probably a great example, is those young girls there that are, kind of seeing and being exposed to and accepting a viewpoint that among their age group and peers 10 years ago would be completely unacceptable. So good for them. That's great.
Yeah. It was a nice moment, nice little breath of fresh air for sure. Let's see. So here's oh gosh, this makes me so grossed out to even talk about this, but we're going to. Completely changing gears for the most part here. The Epstein stuff and things. So what was the number? About 3 million documents,
various documents, everything from emails to photographs to all kinds of stuff that's in there. And it's been out since Monday, I think, or maybe Tuesday. But either way, people have been immersing themselves into these 3 million documents, and they're trying to find all kinds of things. Now, there are a couple things that have come out of this. There are the litany of famous people names that we, some we knew, some we suspected, some were rumored about. Now we've got confirmation. A lot of Hollywood celebrities are mentioned in there. There's some politicians beyond Prince Andrew that are mentioned in there. There's a number of sports owners mentioned in there, which is interesting.
Some doctor too that everybody keeps talking about, some big name or lifestyle doctor or something.
But listen, folks, no matter what you are told, no matter what people want to believe or they proclaim, yes, President Trump's name were in the files.
Right.
No, there is no evidence, no credible evidence that of any wrongdoing on his part. Yes, there is an accusation in there from a young woman who says, forcible, sexual acts and some other things. Everything about her statement is essentially not. It's disproven. She talked about things happening at a golf course that he owned at the time. He didn't own the golf course until 7 or 8 years after she claimed that the thing happened. The FBI, the note on her sheet says not a credible witness,
Right.
you know, blah, 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 blah. But people are completely ignoring that. And they're saying, but he's in there, but there's an accusation in there, but he's guilty,
Right.
you know, and they're
Right.
assuming guilt already, obviously. So
yeah, and the same people that are saying absolutely nothing about the Clintons or about Bill
Right.
Gates or about, you know, any of these other people, they you know, with some really uncomfortable
Yes.
things in there
Very.
for these people, like
Yep.
really bad. I
There-
mean, talk
and-
about Bill Gates for one.
and his wife, his ex-wife,
Yeah.
you know, Melinda, has been interviewed since the release of these documents. I've seen 2 separate interviews with her, and she has come out and said this needs to be investigated. Like, she's not protecting anybody. She's not hiding anything. She knows that, you know, and she said it, like, I had to leave my marriage because of his, you know, his actions, and this is an indicator of his actions. And so there are things that need to be investigated. There are folks, if you have a soft or a weak stomach, I would not recommend you dive very deep into these things, because there are some horrific accusations in there about, you know, President H.W. Bush, accusations about him, among other people. And this is not a party lines thing. This is literally the elites of the world, in every arena you can think of: politics, finance, you know, Hollywood stardom, all of those things. There are tons and tons of people being accused of some absolute, we're talking about satanic, we're talking about human sacrifice, we're talking about ritualistic killings, we're talking about all kinds of horrific things happening on Epstein Island or in association with Epstein himself. You know, there are mentions of just unbelievable people. And I have not dug deep into this, but I have dug enough that I posted on social media the other day that if even 1/3 of this is true, we have a very serious problem across the United States. Like, this is burn it down and start over kind of bad. If this stuff is true, even a portion of this is true. I mean, it is some truly horrific things in those, not just emails, but photographs and other things that are in there. It's some pretty terrible stuff.
Yeah, horrific, awful stuff. And I agree with you. You know, I was thinking of that yesterday as I was just scrolling through content. And of course, you know, everybody knows how the algorithm, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but how the algorithms work is if you watch something, you know, through past a certain number of seconds, I think it's like 7 seconds, in particular, if you watch it through to the end, it tells the algorithm that is content that you're interested in. So of course, as soon as I watched one video talking about, you know, from a content creator talking about Epstein and the files, then there was, like, you know, probably 100 more after that. And, you know, I did just kind of do the fast scroll right past a lot of them. I did watch some of them just to see, you know, just the gist of what they were saying. And I was thinking about these people who were, you know, and every single one of them was saying, you know, I'm spending, you know, hours upon hours reviewing these and reading these. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that is not going to serve you well. It is not going to serve your mental health well at all, because just from the little bits that I've seen and heard and read about, it just made me just sick to my stomach, like just really feeling physically sickened by just the little bits that they were relaying from it. And I have not done not even one single dive into any of that. So I am staying there. I'm protecting my peace with everything that I've got. You know, and maybe some people say, oh, you need to read it, you need to know, you know, it's how no, we've got people for that. We've got people that are willing to do that. And and just, you know, one of the things that I was shaking my head at, like, I remember how long we've been hearing about Pizzagate, and all the people from that side of things, that the non-believers were like, you guys are so stupid. Oh, really? Pizzagate? That's so dumb. It's made up. It's, what was it? QAnon or whatever, you know, whatever they're calling it, that and everything. And then, you know, one of the videos that I was watching was pulling up the emails, you know, and all of these emails with all of their code language that we're never, well, maybe someday we'll know what those codes actually stood for. We can speculate certainly pretty easily on what, but it was the pizza, so many references. They actually took the time to count in all of the emails that they had read, count how many references there were to certain keywords, like and it was pizza. Another one was cupcakes. They kept referencing cupcakes all the time, and how, you know, Jeffrey needs his cupcakes. Make sure you get his cupcakes to him. You know, all of that. Furniture was another one, and of course there was that whole Wayfarer thing. I don't know if you, yeah. So there is, I mean, 3 million files released. You can't even fathom. And like you said, what we've heard and seen is bad enough. And it brings us right back, right, Clay, to the question that we all constantly ask and should continue to ask and demand, really, is where are the arrests? Where are the repercussions from this? Where is the accountability for this? I want people, you know, if they can't be imprisoned and jailed, they need to be out of office, not serving the community in any way, shape, or form. I mean, where is it? You know, and we shouldn't rest until we see that, and we shouldn't think that this is the end of it. Like the whole, okay, yay, they were released. Now what? You know, it should be the now what? Let's see something from it. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that the Trump administration is working on that, or the DOJ and their department and the FBI and everybody. You know, I'd like to believe that they are. So, what do you think?
Yeah, the problem is that the message from the president is we need to move on from this, which is not what America voted for. That's not why he got put into office. You know, one of the top reasons he got elected was to handle this. And when we say handle it, we're talking about exactly what you said, which is arrests, people being held accountable for this. And to just dismiss this to say, well, people just need to move on, like that doesn't work. And so, you know, it's bad messaging from the president. And, you know, it's, we all need accountability. And again, if even a portion of this stuff is true, we need accountability. Those victims need people held accountable. Because I will tell you that if this stuff continues to bubble and no one is held accountable, the potential for vigilante justice just goes up, right? And it's going to happen to public figures accused in this, because people believe the government's not going to act. They're not going to do the right thing. They're not going to hold anybody accountable. So somebody has to, and it might as well be me. And you know, and people are going to believe that in their heart. And you're going to see people, rightfully so or not rightfully so, you're going to see people get hurt over this. And it's not going to be through due process.
Right.
The problem is that in today's day and age, one of the biggest fears that I have is we don't know how much of this is true, how much of it is AI generated, how much of it is any of that stuff. None of us know. All we know is there was 3 million documents dumped on a website that people have been digging through for a few days now. And, you know, could this, you know, trials on these things last for years? Sure, they could, with the amount of evidence that is out there. But at some point, we've just got to do it. Like as a nation, we need to demand that these things are done. I don't care. Like a simple fact of let's just pick somebody that we know was mentioned in the emails. And I'm not saying guilty or not guilty. George Clooney's name is in the emails, right? He's in the documents.
Right.
How long before George Clooney is picked up by the FBI and brought in for questioning? When does that happen? Again, I'm not even saying he's got to be arrested. When is he going to be questioned? When is the owner of the Giants, I think is one of the ones that's the football Giants is listed on there as in there. One of the sports owners. You've got, you know, who else? Tom Hanks is in there, right? You've got there are all kinds of people mentioned in there. Again, bring them in. We need to see activity and action based on what is public knowledge right now. And my fear is that we're not going to see it. It's not going to be fast enough. And people are going to start taking matters in their own hands. And I know that there are people who are sitting out there watching and listening to us who are saying, good. Listen, folks, we never encourage that. I don't encourage it as much as appealing as it can be at times. That is not how America operates.
Right. Listen, I'm the first one to love choosing violence, and I know that
because I did it for a living.
Right?
Some people need
it. You know, listen, I married a man of action, and he, you know, I love that. I love that, and I think it's right, and I think it's good, but it has to be done right and
correct.
You know, so oof. this whole thing is just so horrific, and we cannot get right. Like, we just cannot get, we can't become apathetic to this. And I think that is the tendency. And I think that was part of the goal, to exhaust us. And we talked about this once before as being, low key. This was a goal to get us so desensitized. That was the word I was looking for before. So desensitized to the horror of all of this. And I think in some aspects that is the case, that people have. When you start hearing people say things like President Trump said, get over it. No. And, it worked already to be putting the pressure on. That is how we got all of these released, because people would not rest. They would not let it go. And, and I think what has to happen is that pressure has to be continuously put on the administration to do that, to keep pursuing it at all costs. And, and I can put a very easy guess as to why they all want it to go away. It's because there are so many big, powerful people in those lists, and that will have a massive ripple effect on many, many things that are actually going to hurt us all in some way, shape, or form. And I still say, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Like you said, I like what you said, Clay. You said, burn it to the ground. Burn it to the ground. Do it. I don't care who's affected. I don't care if it's somebody I have on such, high esteem or high regard. I don't care. Do it. I don't care about any of these people, even the ones that I like, even President Trump, if that were the case. I don't care. And I think I can say that for most of us, if not all of us. There's certainly some people who, have their idols, and they will, that's the hill they'll die on. They must be protected at all costs. I disagree. I don't know a single person other than my family members, my babies, that, I feel that way about. So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
And, a quick transition to next topic, but watch for the shiny object, the distraction, to draw your eyes away from this. It's only been a couple of days, but to watch this, the potential for this to, become below the fold, as they used to say when we're referencing newspapers, to watch this topic float to the bottom of the news feed very quickly because something else happens. Like, I don't know, maybe war with Iran.
You think that might get just brushed aside? Yeah, I'm letting you run with this one, Clay.
Yeah, and just very quickly, folks, just so you understand what's going on. So we've moved, obviously, a lot of combat power, as we refer to it, into the region. I think there's now 2 carrier strike groups, one in the Med and then one in the Gulf, that are within reach of Iran. Plus, there's, and this is all public knowledge, folks. I'm not telling you anything that's not out there. But there's some other assets that have been pushed forward in anticipation of a regime collapse, or even to potentially assist in a regime collapse. The problem is now the messaging from you've got broken 2 sets of messaging from the Iranian government. So you've got one message that says, yes, let's talk about this. And then you've got the IRGC, the military hardliner side, that has essentially said, if there is an attack on Iran, we will start a region-wide war. Everybody. They said they're gonna start a war with everybody. Now, most of that will be directed at Israel, but there's a lot of people and a lot of space between Iran and Israel, right? So they are threatening to, engage with Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, right? All of these countries, and turn the entire Middle East into a battleground. That is the threat right now. And so I think, it's very irrational, but that is kind of who they are. So I think it's being taken very seriously. But in the meantime, for all of you that aren't paying attention, there's thousands of Iranians dying over this, right? They're on the edge of a revolution. There have been in excess of, I think we're approaching 10,000 fatalities at this point, and then tens of thousands have been injured. There have been kids and women, and it's all of the horrific things that you imagine. But they are planning on holding the entire region hostage to try to prevent an invasion or an attack by the United States or anybody else. It's everything's hanging by a thread right now over there, and really just about anything could set it off. So it's very tenuous right at the moment.
And we're so distracted. We're so easily distracted by the shiny objects, right?
Right.
And there's so much in the news cycle that things that are not in our immediate line of sight, we tend to kind of forget what's going on, and that's, talk about atrocities, that's a huge one right there. So yeah, I appreciate you keeping an eye on it, and bringing it to attention for the rest of us, because I mean, we should be paying attention for all of the obvious reasons. We should be paying attention to this. So yeah, we know it's you who's gonna we know it's you. You're gonna keep an eye on this, and we'll talk. I'm
That's what I
sure
do.
we'll have more to talk about it, I'm sure, next week. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that one. We have two kind of frivolous things to end the evening with you guys. Let's take a quick chat about these ninnies. I feel fairly confident saying that you, along with myself, didn't watch a damn minute of it.
Not a minute.
Not a minute.
Not a single minute.
I didn't even know it was on until after the fact. The only way I knew about it was thanks to TikTok and social media, sharing those soon to be viral clips right away. One of them being one that has nothing to do with politics, shockingly, because that's, the whole night was all about that, was the Justin Bieber performance, which I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to make of any of that. I know he is a very tormented young man who has been through it and then some. So I kind of just feel like giving him accolades for kind of just surviving. So that was, I think, maybe like one of the few non-political statement moments, which is great. People actually got to see a performer performing something besides their own self-gratitude and backslapping. Let's see. So what else? So let's see. It's like the woke awards night, basically. It was an immigration soapbox for these people. The one that I think has gone the most viral is this talented little ninny.
Legal on stolen land. And yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now.
Probably not that. Probably don't say. And in case you didn't quite catch what she had said at the beginning of that, she said, what did she say? No one is illegal on stolen land. No one is illegal on stolen land. That was her powerful statement.
Yeah, it's Billie Eilish. She's, for those of you that, yes, you said it. She is talented. It's not, I don't listen to that style of music, but, I did what I do with most celebrities when they say something stupid like that. And the first thing that I do is go to their education. And so she was raised, homeschooled. She started into music very young. So you can imagine that her homeschooling tapered off. Right. She's been a protected individual since she was, a prepubescent, 10-year-old, in the sense that she's lived in her own little world. And she still lives in her own little world. When she talks about her, illegal, no one is illegal on stolen land. She lives in a $14 million piece of property in LA that's got 8-foot fence and gate and security guards and security cameras and all of these things. And she's being mocked relentlessly by everyone, including the tribe itself, who originally was native to that area of Los Angeles, who had said she has not contacted us about returning her piece of property to us at any point in the future.
I can't believe she hasn't yet. Yeah. And another example, and I'm such a mom. I have such a hard time coming down hard on young people like that, because they're just so indoctrinated. They're just so, and then you add that level of being, and I'm not justifying it, guys. I'm not justifying this at all. I'm just seeing a very rounded picture of this. You have somebody like you were just saying, who's, super, super isolated and protected and in this safe little bubble. And she has always existed in a safe little bubble of protection. And constant affirmation of her rightness and her greatness and her smartness and all of these things. So you have this completely coddled, soft little human with no life experience other than that tiny little bubble. And I don't mock her for that. I just see it for what it is. Somebody who can't possibly have a intelligent scope of understanding of things, because she's just simply not even allowed to. She's not even afforded that opportunity to do that. And and now you say something like this. You say your big brave statement, and what do you get? You get applause and standing ovation and everybody telling you good job, and it just feeds the fuel of this narcissistic ignorance that they live in, and that they just spread on the world like a cancer. And it's so hard to take them seriously, but yet there are people who think that what they have to say actually has value and any credence to it. And then what happens? Well, the internets, and they do what they do. And, like you said. So again, I have a hard time being terribly harsh. I guess that maybe might have all sounded a little harsh. Did it? I don't know.
Nah,
I don't.
Not as harsh as I usually do. But listen, folks, it was in the aftermath, like Elsa said, neither of us watched it. You catch, whether it's news shows or whatever, or social media, and people are, you catch the highlights here and there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was, uncanny that just the same time that all of these Epstein files come out, and there's all these accusations of pedophilia and all of these things coming out of Hollywood, that you've got this same group of people, right? And you've got like Heidi Klum in a dress that was pressed. It was formed leather, like a skin tonish yellow, that literally looked like she was walking around naked. Like, and then you had, what was her name? I just looked it up. Chapel Rowan. So her dress, if you haven't seen it, folks, like,
it's so gross.
Never in public, see-through, like the cut, like literally hanging from her nipples and hanging down, like, and the fact that I get the shock factor, and that's been going on a long time. Like, we can go back to Cher in the friggin' 80s, right? Yes. But you get this, and it's like this, it's the fact that it's on TV and that everybody just goes, oh, so brave. So brave. It's like, no, you're wrong. She's crazy. She's got a mental disorder. Like, and anybody who told her that was a good idea also has a mental disorder. And it's this self-perpetuating, I like to say self-licking ice cream cone of Hollywood, where you put them in a room together and they all applaud each other for being so brave. And they just believe that because that's the only thing that they're ever exposed to. Yeah. And this was just another example of all of that crap.
Yeah. I did catch one video. I don't know who she is. I feel like I should always know who all these people are, but I don't even know a quarter of who these people are. But apparently there's a influencer, I guess. I don't know. She's a social media personality, pretty blonde woman, and she was in the audience, and she recorded her reaction, or somebody recorded her reaction to Billie Eilish's little statement. And she was just like mercilessly mocking her, and she was like, so bravo, so brave, and all that stuff. And I think that's gone somewhat viral, that reaction, so it's like, don't be deceived either that everybody there was so impressed. They weren't.
Ricky Gervais should host every award show. Every single
one. Let him host every single one of them, because that's still forever the ultimate.
He's
roast.
The best.
Yeah,
he is the
absolute best. I like him quite a bit, and he's a massive animal lover, so I love him even more. But yeah, so no surprises there. Completely predictable. And as somebody who grew up watching and looking forward to, my mom and I would sit, right? We would sit and watch that, every single one of them. And we weren't actually growing up. We weren't like big Broadway people, but even the Tonys, like, we watched every single one of them. We loved them so much. Listen, it was such an event to watch them. And now
they were like they were the rare times where we got to stay up past bedtime, right? The Grammys, the Oscars, the Emmys, like, we got to watch that as kids. And now I don't go anywhere near that stuff, because I like the people involved, and the industries themselves are just, they're horrific. It's disgusting.
And especially when going back to momentarily for the Epstein stuff, especially when what's going on in the underbelly, in the dark of all of their stuff. It's like, you guys are so gross, and all you do is just make our contempt for you grow every single day. So yeah. All right. Last but not least, let's talk about the comments. We started a new segment where we take a quick glance through the comments section and pull up a couple few things that caught our eye. And here was one that I thought was a really good one, and we actually ended up talking about it. But I will reiterate that. And thank you, Steve, for asking that question.
He was super active in the comments too.
Yeah,
bravo, Steve Nygaard.
Yeah.
He was in it. Like that
Yes.
was good.
Much appreciated. But yeah, as you may or may not have heard, I am 100% all for it. I think the body cams should be an absolute automatic yes, and I'm stunned and disappointed and surprised that they weren't already. You, Clay?
Oh no, for sure. We talked about it before. The fact that they haven't had them until now is baffling to me. So I'm a huge supporter.
So yeah, thank you, Steve, for asking that. What do we have next? This was a little bit longer. I'm going to read it real quick for anybody watching, and I'll explain why I wanted to put it up there. So Marjorie commented that this is a video talking about the Alex Preddy incident. She said there was a video of the same guy. She mistyped. It was probably a typo. Scuffling is what she meant to say.
Yeah.
There was a video of the same guy scuffling with an ICE agent, and when the agents were leaving, he went up and kicked out their taillights. The man had a lot of anger issues and need to feel like a hero, covert, malignant narcissist, never seemed to be anything but a good old guy. But this guy has a lot of issues. And then somebody named Ramon responded to her saying, now that's funny. Anger issues, need to feel like a hero, covert, malignant narcissist. Sounds very familiar. So what you are saying is a man who has all of those issues should be shot 8 times in the back of the head and back. I will pray for you. So the reason why I really wanted to share this is because I have talked for years about the straw man fallacy, the straw man argument, and how people love to use that, and how and why you should never give them a quarter, because the goal is to get you to apologize and backpedal on something that you never said. Hence so what you are saying is, he's inferring and, trying to imply that he's reading between the lines of something that she said, but she never actually said that, and nor would she, So this is just my little note to everybody. When you see things like, so you're saying, so what you're saying is, oh, so you think that. And anytime that I actually even give a response to somebody who does that is to say, I said exactly what I said and nothing other than that. How you interpret it is 100% on you. And that should be, if you're going to respond at all, that should be your only response. So that's that. And then here's my fun one. This is the one that made me smile. I got called based blonde. Now, so I kind of knew what that term meant, but I didn't really know fully what it meant. I knew it was a compliment. I knew it was a good.
I had to ask you because I didn't know either.
And I had to have it prepared to tell all of you what it is, because I stinking love it. And I don't know if you guys maybe haven't heard the term, but it's basically like, you know how the left has woke, and in their minds that's a compliment to be called woke. They think that's a good thing. So for us, our version for us is based. We are based. If you're based, it's a modern slang. It's modern slang based. That basically means grounded, unapologetically honest, and not trying to win approval. If someone says that's based, they usually mean that's true, that's bold, that person isn't pandering. They said what they believe, even if it's unpopular, and it often carries a tone of respect, like, finally, somebody with a spine. So, Steve, my friend, thank you. That was, to me, that is probably one of the highest compliments someone could ever give me. So thank you, my friend, for that. I appreciate it. I will take that at a girl and smile about it. So thank you. So that's it. That's all I got, Clay.
as you should, and good for you. That's a compliment. I would take that as well. Very nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Clay, you got anything you want to close them out with?
No, folks, a little bit longer show, but important topics as always. And, we appreciate you sticking in, and jump in the comments. You might become famous, good or bad, but you might become famous. And right. As always from me, till next time, keep moving, keep shooting.
Take care, guys. Bye.
The headlines will change by tomorrow, but the patterns won't. Thanks for spending this time with us. We'll be back to keep asking the harder questions and telling the quieter truths. Until then, stay grounded, be discerning, and we'll see you next time.